Excuse me. Good day, y'all. Praying all is well. My brother-in-law George, when he hears this, he's gonna freak out. Now, my brother-in-law George, he's been around the family since I was a little boy, y'all. I'm talking about little. Probably about 7, 5 or 6, something like that. Anyway, I'm gonna tell you about 2 times that I was with George, and guns got pulled out. Again, just with George. The first time, and George is gonna freak out because of the details that I remember. Back in the days when there was the cable news first started in the Northeast, the New York area, on the scene was WHT, right? George and Cuba, shout out to Cuba, he's out in Denver. They used to work. One of them did. Anyway, George used to install these on the side. And it wasn't cheap, even for back then. We used to get on top of the roofs of homes. Some of them were pitched and whatnot to set up antennas. One of them was toward, I think the second one was HBO. One you had to point toward the Twin Towers and the other toward the Empire State Building. It was something like that. Anyway, George and I, really George, I was just there. I mean, I was young. Must have been like 8, 9 maybe. At the latest 10. We're coming back from Queens in a red van George had that he was doing the work to convert, to put a bed and stuff like that, you know. Anyway, I remember the home and everything. The whole night. I think George charged them like $375 or $475. It wasn't cheap. Anyway, we're coming from Queens and we get off on the exit on Metropolitan and Marcy over there by what we knew it as Greengrass Park. There's an exit by the BQE and all that. And there's traffic like always. And something happened and we came across this light or something. And there was cars coming the opposite direction like this were coming this way. And I think George blew the horn at the dude, right? The dude was driving one of those 80s, kind of like BMW-ish type small cars like that. Anyway, I remember the lady and the whole 9 yards. The lady was a fine-looking woman, She wasn't a small woman. She wasn't big, fine-looking woman. She was black. The dude that got out was black. And this dude was no joke. He was a big man. Anybody that knows Mr. Rogers, he was like that. Except this individual was darker than Mr. Rogers, about that height. And I saw the man stop the car. I saw him open the door. I was looking. And I could see the lady saying to him, don't, please don't. And she tried to grab him. And I remember her hand going toward her head like, oh my God. And I see when the guy gets out the car, his hand, he has a gun in it. I'm sure George saw it too because of his reaction. And I just sat in that car frozen looking forward. I could see from the corner of my eye. And I'm like, and the dude's like, what did you just say? I think George said the F word. Just said, I didn't say nothing. Yeah. You better not have that. And he walked away. Right? Now, as an adult, I thought about that. And I was like, well, if I would have not been strapping and I was George, depending on when you caught me in my lifetime, It was already on drive. No, no, he couldn't do that because we were facing the other direction. So he caught us at an angle. And anyway, that was once. Second time, years later. Now I'm like 17, right? I'm in the club that's on our street. It's just a name. It's just a bar for the block, basically, where the older men went. There was a pool table, and we used to go in there in the winter time, to get warm. Anyway, there's a bunch of us in there. And there's the dude that used to live on South 3rd and Bedford. Nickname Noodles. He was a dark skinned cat. He was Puerto Rican. He was a cool dude. Super cool dude. Never had an issue. I mean, I wasn't like a friend of his. We never hung out, but we knew each other. He brought weed off of me before because I was slinging weed for George on South Second. Anyway, he calls me, and I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna buy some weed because you weren't doing it in the club. That was for sure. I mean, in the bar, that was for sure. So we step outside, and anybody that knows that building knows there's two doors, right? In between the doors, I'm gonna say probably 6 feet, maybe 8 feet in between the door going out and then the second door that leads right outside. So we get in between that space, and old boy turns around and pulls out a gun. Excuse me. Pulls out a gun. And I'm like, yo. And what I did that time was the same thing I did every time that I've had a gun pulled out on me. I've had the same reaction, except for that time with George in the van, because he wasn't pulling it out on me. He was pulling it out on George. So, but every time they pulled out a gun, before anything is said, it's like so automatic. I didn't even think about it. Every time I would just lift up my hands and say, ain't no need for guns. The first thing I always said. That happened about 3 or 4 times, maybe 5. Anyway, so Noodles, oh, and by the way, may he rest in peace. A few years later, or maybe the following year, I heard he passed away. Uh, Apparently, he worked in a factory that dealt with spray paint or some sort of paint and the fumes and whatnot. So that's what I heard. Actually, him and I spoke about this incident about a year after that. Yeah. He said, he was tripping this. Anyway, so he got the gun out, and he's like, no, I heard that you said it was odd. He said about me or him selling weed that I thought he was going to sell weed on. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Now, while this is going on, I'm not standing still. I'm walking around in a circle in this area that's like 8 feet by 6, I want to say, or say 8 by 8. I'm going circular like that. He's in the middle. And when I get to the part of the outer door where my back is facing, the door that takes you out, the other door opens. And who is it? George. My brother-in-law walks in. And he's like, so he turns around and now he got the gun facing at George. And George is like, what's going on here? So now he's like, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to start walking around. And then George walks around. Forgive me, George, but I was thinking this. I thought to myself, if I could get that dude to just focus on George for a couple of seconds, I'm going to jump this dude. While also praying that while he's pointing it at me, that George does not go for him. Yeah. Anyway, we settled it. He left. I don't know where George went. I know I went inside the bar, and my brother was there. And he's like, yo, dude, are you all right? I was like, yeah. And he was like, no, something happened. I said, this dude just put out a... He was like, well, anyway, I let it go. I said, dude, just leave that man alone, you know, because it was weird. Anyway, later on that summer, I ran into him by 17, PS 17, back there. And he said, yo, you know what? I was tripping, you know. So that was that. Yeah, but those are the two times where the guns got drawn and George and I were involved. All right, guys. God bless. Take care of each other.